Callie's here. All right, let's go ahead and pray. Is there anything you guys want to pray about before we start tonight? Brandon? Good.
People with the accident.
Do you know them?
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what
Okay. The guy that died as a pastor? Oh, okay. All right. Anything else? Going once, going twice? So, all right, let's pray, guys. Lord, thanks for the day. Thank you for your grace and your forgiveness in each of our lives. Thank you for not treating us like we deserve. Pray that as we're here tonight that we focus and listen to what you have to say to us. That we put off the distractions we have, whether it's school, whether it's thinking about spring break that we're on, or we're going to be on next week. Whether it's just hurts and stuff that we have in our lives. Pray we'll be able to put that off for the next half hour or so, Lord, and focus on what you have for us. Pray that we remember that as we're here tonight, we're not here by an accident. You decided that we'd be here today for a purpose greater than ourselves. So I pray that we make the most out of this opportunity, Lord. Not slack off, not take advantage of it, but to get what we need to out of it, Lord, for your glory, not our own. We love you, we thank you, and we ask this in your name. Amen. All right, guys, we've been talking about Christ's last days to the cross. We talked a few weeks ago about Judas and how he tried to manipulate Jesus. His motives were wrong in following Jesus, and the whole thing was a setup. And then 2 weeks ago, we talked about Christ's commitment, how he was in the garden and he wrestled through whether or not we were worth dying for. They said he actually sweat blood. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I got this, God, no big deal. But he actually wrestled through it. It was a 4, 5, 6 hour process where he was on the edge of death because he had all that anguish, all that agony, all that stress on him. But at the end, he decided that each of us was worthless. We were worth dying for, that we were worth giving his life for. And last week, we looked at the first religious trial that Jesus went through. We said that he actually went through 6 different trials in about 20 hours. And we said the first trial, the whole thing was a sham. The whole thing was a setup. They set him up exactly to get what they wanted to. And it wasn't legal, it wasn't fair, it wasn't right, but they got what they wanted. Well, we got to understand then after that first trial goes by and Jesus is put in prison, it's probably about 3 o'clock in the morning because we said the trial was illegal. Jesus is put in prison about 3 o'clock and he's there till about 5 or 6 in the morning. At 5 or 6 in the morning, they pick him up, they get him out of jail, and they bring him to Pilate. And there's a few things you got to understand about Pilate. We also said that, before we get there, that a lot of us grow up in church. So like hearing the Easter story all the time, Jesus died on the cross, it kind of gets old and kind of goes through one ear and out the other. And we get it and we understand it, but it doesn't really set into our hearts. So we're looking at this from a different perspective these are the last couple of weeks. We're going to actually put ourselves there is what I'm asking you guys to do, so you can see what actually happened and what you would have maybe done in the situation. So Jesus goes to Pilate. A few things you got to understand about Pilate. Not going to work, is it? Pilate does not have a dream job. Okay, Pilate's the governor of this area where Jerusalem is. And this area is a hot spot. So if there's going to be a rebellion, if there's going to be a fight, if there's going to be a revolt, it's going to be there. He's constantly dealing with stress with these Jewish people who don't like Rome. And they're constantly fighting it out. In fact, at this point where Pilate's at this point, his life's been on the line twice now. And another revolt happens, it's going to cost him his life. So he doesn't have the dream job. He's not excited about the job. He's a harsh guy. He's been through a lot of rough times. He's dealing with a lot of people he doesn't like, dealing with issues he doesn't like, so it makes him really harsh. But I want you to understand something too about Pilate, is that he actually attempts to be fair. He tries to do the right thing. And if you look at our lives, a lot of us, we get into situations that aren't really good, aren't positive. We kind of dealt with a job or an issue that we don't really want to deal with, but we have to deal with it, and we try to do the right thing. And I want you to understand that Pilate is kind of in the same spot we're in a lot of times. He tried to do the right thing. He attempted to do the right thing. He was hard. He was hard-hearted. He was hard-hearted. He was harsh. But he actually tried to be fair. He actually tried to do the right thing. So I want you to understand what's going on here. They pick up Jesus, they bring him to Pilate. And they walk in. Now, they're not going to go into Pilate's palace like they usually would because it's the Passover. If they go into a Gentile place, because they're all Jewish, they go into a place that's not Jewish, they become defiled. Now, let's keep in mind that we just had the first religious trial. The whole thing was a sham. The whole thing was a setup. So they're really acting like major hypocrites here by going, well, we can't go there. We're not, you're too dirty and all this stuff. So they bring Jesus to Pilate. So Pilate came out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" Now, it was a pretty direct question, right? He said, "What are you charging this guy with?" And look what they answered with. "If you were not a criminal," he replied, we wouldn't have handed him over to you. So in other words, what they're pretty much saying to the governor, it's none of your business what he's being charged with. Just give us what we want so we can get this over with. Now, he didn't really like the attitude. Pilate didn't want to deal with their crowd. He didn't deal with their garbage. He didn't like them. He didn't like what they were doing. He didn't like their religious stuff. He didn't even like Jesus. He wanted nothing to do with this whole situation. So for them to give him an attitude to this was a big deal. So Pilate says to him, "Fine, take him the way you want from yourself. Take him yourself and judge him by your own law." So at that point, they would have been like, we're not playing games anymore. So they said, "But we have no right to execute anyone." Hold on a second. So it's not really about me judging this guy. You just want me to sentence him to death. You see what's going on here? There's a really weird, harsh dynamic. They walk and they go, "We want you to do what we want you to do." He goes, "Give me a break." Why? I said, "Listen, just do what we want you to do." And Pilate's like, "I don't think so. What's your intent? What's your motive?" So when the religious leaders who just beat the tar out of Jesus, who've imprisoned him for no reason, who have set the whole thing up, they give the governor an attitude, it doesn't go over real well. So then he goes ahead and he gives it right back to him, and then you realize it's their intention. Their intention is not to get justice. Their intention is to get Jesus killed. So what happens is next is the crowd pretty much carries Jesus. They kind of push Jesus to where Pilate's at. It says the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Christ the King." So they give up 3 general accusations, and they're really broad and they're really general. The first one is that he's subverting our nation. In other words, he's undermining the authority that you guys have put in place. What does that mean? How do you prove that? You can't really prove the guy's a spy. So the first one kind of went through one ear and out the other. The second one is that he opposes payment of taxes to Caesar. Well, that's what the religious leaders are already doing. So Pilate hears the second charge and goes, "Yeah, whatever. You guys are doing the same thing and no one's messing with you about it. Why is this a big deal?" But the third charge would have caught Pilate's attention. The third charge is that he claims to be a king. So if he claims to be a king, that means he's actually in opposition to the authority set up in place. That's treason. That was a big deal. Remember, Pilate's head's already on the line. His life's already on the line. His job's already on the line. So for him to hear there's a threat to his king, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. I'm going to show you a clip. And honestly, it's a pretty long clip. It's about 12, 15 minutes almost. But I cut out about 20 minutes of it. And the reason I cut out 2 parts that I want you to know about right off the bat. The first one is that Jesus actually faces Pilate twice. The first time he faces him, Pilate doesn't want to deal with him. So he sends him to Herod. Well, Herod expects a magic show. And you know how Jesus loves to put on magic shows everywhere. So he was like, "Yeah, I don't think so." So Herod said, "Forget this guy, send him back to Pilate." So then Pilate faces him a second time. So you don't see the whole deal with Pilate. You don't see the whole deal with Herod. The second thing you don't see is that Pilate has Jesus scourged. And what that actually meant was it was a big, long leather whip. So they call it the cat o' nine tails. So you had this long whip, and instead of just one whip like an Indiana Jones deal, it had a bunch of different ends on it. And each end had a piece of sharp metal, or bone, or glass, or iron, or old piece of the broken chain. And they would beat him with it 39 times. So what actually happened when they hit Jesus with it, it would dig in and rip the flesh off. So you actually, after Jesus was beat 39 times, because supposedly 40 times you were dead. But 39 times supposedly you were able to live through that. It was just pretty gruesome. I didn't bother showing it. But you'll definitely see a difference in the clip between before he scourged and after. Because what happens was when that whip dug into their back, it actually ripped the flesh off, and you could actually see his bones, you could see the ligaments and the muscles tearing. So this wasn't like a pirate ship where someone got whipped a couple times. Yeah, they tore this guy up. As you guys watch this, I want to challenge you to put yourself there. What would have been your reaction? What would you have been thinking? If you were in Pilate's shoes, how would you have handled it? Becky, you want to go ahead and click on that?